afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to everybody who are watching us around the world. Today is the day 14 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. Ukraine is still holding strong, and yet another sleepless night passed for many occupants of Kiev, Mariupol, Kharkiv, Odessa, and many other cities that feel that they are next. Their bomb shelling, their attacks, and Russia is still continue their aggression. However, people are trying to get through safety. They are trying to escape, some staying and fighting, some protecting their elderly, their children, and taking them to safe places. Today, our guest is Ivan Bobrov, who is from Irpin, which is now totally occupied by Russian forces. Hello, Ivan, sorry, and it is lovely to see you in our studio. I'm glad you're safe. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the situation in your town?
Hello, Vera. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, the situation has been quite complicated because nobody could have ever imagined that Irpin would become such a hot spot. I'm a resident of Irpin. I've lived in Irpin for 5 months, yeah, before it started, and I would say this has been one of the calmest places I've ever lived in. And the very first day, I mean, February 24th, was quite shocking because I remember waking up at about 5 a.m., hearing a lot of noise and sounds of cars heading due west. It was a huge line of cars, lots of traffic jams around the city, which was completely unnatural, for my neighborhood because it's a super calm area. I live on the 18th floor, so it's usually, you can't hear anything there. So I thought something's wrong. So I grabbed my phone, I went on Instagram, and I immediately watched a video by Vladimir Zelensky basically saying that Russia invaded Ukraine. So I didn't know what to do. My first idea was to go for a run and just, to continue my usual morning ritual, my morning routine, which I did. As I went out, I saw lots of people, lots of people on the street, which is not usual again for this time, and just for this day. People were buying groceries, people were just fleeing. Yeah, basically fleeing. My heart rate went up as I still didn't know what to do next. What am I going to do on this day? So I decided to stay. I decided to continue, follow my plan. My students started messaging me. I'm an English coach. I help Ukrainian entrepreneurs master English, and to use it in their business, in their life. They started messaging me saying, "Ivan, are we going to have a lesson? Are we going to have a session? Is it still on?" And I said, guys, unfortunately, it's not. So let's cancel it. And what I had to write to my own clients, to my own students, is I remember it was, I'm forced to cancel it until further notice, because I just didn't know what to promise to them. So, and I stayed, and later on at the same day, I started hearing noises, military planes flying over my apartment building, because I live on the last floor, on the 18th floor. And later on in the afternoon, I heard, some sounds of bombing or shots or fire. And I found out that it was Istanbul airport fight, because I live only 9 kilometers away from Istanbul airport. So that's what happened on day one.
So when did you decide that it's time to leave the town?
I didn't decide it right away. I stayed hopeful until the very end. So I spent the 9 following days in the basement of my apartment building with other neighbors who also stayed there. I had faith that my block, my building would not be destroyed and would not be in any way harmed by this war and by the events that followed. And on the 9th day, I saw, there were, my apartment building was fired. So there were several fire attempts, yes, and clearly some windows were broken. We saw that, the front of the building was broken. And at that point, me and my neighbors, we saw that clearly something dangerous is coming. Like, if we stay one more day, we might be running for our lives. So on day 10, we decided to leave. We decided to flee Irpin. It was early morning. We just packed the essentials. We still had time to prepare. So basically, as I was there, I was able to, go to my apartment for like 15, 20 minutes a day to take a shower, change my clothes, just to stay sane in a way. But basically, I was spending most of my time in the basement. So we left Irpin on day 10 after, we saw that Russian troops are coming. The building had completely been damaged, and we just didn't know what to expect. On the same day, the day we left in the afternoon, Russians entered Irpin. There was a lot of fire. And the church, actually, it was the church, I can't remember, it must have been called the Bible Church or something. It was the evacuation point. So all the people who got evacuated from Irpin, they started there. So we did the same. It was about 8 a.m. These were about 20 people, 4 cars, and we just evacuated from there. They were giving us instructions and paper and which villages to follow, which route to follow to actually do it. Later on the same day, we found out that this church was bombed. So I don't know, we got lucky, really. This was something terrible to learn. This was really terrible news because there were volunteers. It was a shelter for people basically staying there. It was a place where people were provided with food and beverages and all the information. And it was bombed on the same day. So
Sounds
the events,
terrible.
yes, the
So how
events
did you manage to leave? Did you just follow the instructions, or there were some obstacles on your way?
Well, basically, yes, that's what we did. We just followed the instructions. The instructions told us how to get from Irpin to Fastiv. Fastiv being uh, a town, a city from which you can use your GPS or navigator.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it was considered safe. So we just basically followed the route. We followed the little villages, as the main highways were blocked either by Russians or for other reasons, military reasons. We just followed the route. There were lots of blog posts underway, probably every single kilometer there was a blog post. So people were stopped. They got their documents checked, they got their ID checked. So to make sure that these are Ukrainians who are leaving, these are people fleeing their towns and cities.
And where did you find safety? I understand that further away from Kiev and Kharkiv you are, the safer you are. Which town is considered to be safe now?
It's really hard to say, because right now I would say I have relative safety. Yes, I'm relatively safe. But what I can tell you for sure that while I was in Irpin, I felt no safety whatsoever. Like every single second, every single minute, you stay alert because you know what's going to happen. Maybe there's a bomb, it's going to fall down from the sky. You hear some explosion, you hear some fire, so you feel zero safety there. Right now, I am in the suburbs of Lviv, so I'm staying here in my friend's house temporarily. And here I feel relative safety, so we can say. But I understand that I'm still in Ukraine, and what's going to happen tomorrow, obviously, nobody knows that. Nobody can predict that.
Yes, it's quite an escape. You've been lucky. Do you have many friends and relatives who are still in Irpin who didn't manage to get out?
Most of them did. Most of them get out. However, some people they were really hopeful and they decided to stay. Maybe like if we talk about my residential complex, my residential area, it must be about 10 or 15 people who are still there. And right now they're being evacuated, by the authorities. Now it's harder to do it at this point because Russian troops occupied the town. However, it's possible. And I would say that on days 9 and 10 maybe have been the most active evacuation days from my neighborhood because people clearly saw that the buildings started being destroyed. There were bombing, there was fire, and people saw that it's just dangerous to stay. The situation is not getting better.
Well, we have heard many threats from Russians and the people who are getting from Russian forces taken as war prisoners by Ukrainian side. We know from those videos that the orders that were given to Russian soldiers are simply shoot the civilians, kill the civilians. And did you feel it when they have? I mean, I know you already were out before Russians were coming, but what people are saying now, is it now that kind of situation when whoever left in Irpin knows that he can be shot at any time? What are the news?
You know, I stay in touch with my neighbors, with other apartment owners of my complex. Yeah, so we still message each other on Saturday. So what people are saying is that after we left, after I left, Russian troops entered, and they started shooting civilians for no reason. Even people who were staying, in the basements, some people were really courageous to come out and to try to kind of negotiate their evacuation and to be able to flee. But that's what happened. They did that. I know that Russian troops even spent a night, maybe some nights, in my residential complex. So basically, where I live, they robbed some supermarkets, which were nearby, just right next to my apartment building, and that's what happened. And that's terrible because you really see no reason for them to do that, and other than just to provoke fear and to increase terror, yes, in your opinion, just in the whole country. So that's what followed. That was really hard to watch. And as we were just fleeing, as we were getting evacuated, we were reading the news, reading the chats and everything, and people were sharing really unpleasant and completely terrifying news with us.
I understand that United Nations court is completely ruled out the claims of Russian of Russian war because they were telling that they have started this war because of genocide in Ukraine, and it's a false accusations. And the Convention of Genocide is not created for false accusations in genocide, because Russia right now is using this convention as a tool to enter the Ukraine. However, just want to ask you, as a person who lived in Ukraine, who lives in Ukraine, what was the relationship between Ukrainians and Ukrainian-speaking people and Russian-speaking people? Did you ever have any pressure on you because of differences in languages?
Well, I think I'm going to share my personal story here. I was born in a 100% Russian-speaking family. Yeah, so Russian is my primary language. Later on, I learned Ukrainian through school, kindergarten, and university. So this way, it became my second language. I've never actually been criticized for speaking Russian, for using Russian in any area or context of my life. So I felt free to do that. I considered myself bilingual up until the age of 17. After that, I started learning other languages like English, French, Spanish. So then I became a polyglot, and I never had a problem with that. So I saw that Ukraine is, by definition, a bilingual country. We have at least two languages that people use on a daily basis, right? So, and I would say we have enough tolerance, enough linguistic tolerance in that regard, yes, to people who speak other languages. For example, if foreigners when foreigners were coming to Ukraine, they never had a problem with their accent, or either with their accent or with their language. So they could easily speak the language they used to. So to use this as a reason for genocide, to me, sounds like a big joke, because Russian-speaking people have never had, in my personal experience, have never had any serious troubles living in Ukraine or using their native language in Ukraine.
Well, United Nations Court has the same idea, so I think you are in cahoot with the court decision, because it is false and absolutely ridiculous allegations from Vladimir Putin, and the Convention on Genocide was used as an excuse to invade Ukraine, not to punish anybody. It was just a false pretense. And I would like now for us to listen to the lovely songs that created by Ukrainian and Belarusian musical team for us about Ukraine and in support of Ukraine.
Настане день, закінчиться війна, там загубив себе, побачив аж до дна. Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, так лагідно і не пускай. Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, твоя весна прийде нехай.
Складаю зброю вниз. Невже так і вона? Та хоче теплих сліз.
Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, так лагідно і не пускай. Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, твоя весна прийде нехай.
Wonderful musical composition, I Will Not Surrender Without a Fight, Definitely very
Very
nice,
beautiful.
very touching, beautiful song. Ivan, I understand that what you feel right now is probably impossible for us to understand. We can't really connect, because now I do remember what my grandmother told me about the Second World War, and I can sort of relate that to what people are feeling now, people who are escaping, because I know the evacuation is now undergoing, and people trying to escape, and there are another 12 hours of ceasefire rule, which undoubtedly will be broken by Russians, as they usually do, because they besiege the city in the medieval way of cutting supplies, cutting water. I know people, children dying from lack of water, lack of food, lack of everything, and it's very uncivilized manner. Russians were telling that they come into Ukraine to free the nation. How do you feel now as a nation towards Russian people, Russia, Vladimir Putin, their politics? How do you feel about them now?
Vera, you're absolutely right. Feelings are really hard to describe at this point, because when things like that happen, such atrocities and such violence, you're never prepared for that. So I have to say, at this point, or let's say, the moment when I started my evacuation from Irpin, I experienced real emotional numbing. So that's when you ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And the answer is nothing. So the way I explain it is just, the body's self-protection mechanism to protect itself and not to go insane. But basically, we understand that behind that numbing, there are a lot of feelings of anger, of rage, of fear, of hurt, ultimately, that are going to bubble up to the surface at some point. So that's what's happening. I've talked to some students of mine, also some friends of mine who also got evacuated, and people seem to be going through a similar process. So the first 2 or 3 days, after this happens, they're just numbing, you feel nothing. And then suddenly you're starting to come back to your feelings. You start to say, oh, I'm angry, or, oh my goodness, I'm afraid right now. But it's really hard. So many people are just, freezing emotionally, and just not being able to process what has happened. So that is what's happening. Of course, most Ukrainians hate Russians at this point, understandably. Yes, and this was my first reaction to, you want to kill everybody, you hate everybody, you hate the entire country, you hate the entire nation. Now it's really hard to say, because I understand it's a mix of emotions, it's a mix of feelings, and of course, Russia is the one to blame.
Absolutely. Well, I guess everybody will be feeling the same thing or similar thing until the end of the war, because I understand many people who never even thought about taking weapons into their hands suddenly feel like, hold on a second, this is my time. I want to kill Russian soldiers. Amongst people who were evacuated, do you see anybody coming back with the guns and trying to join those territorial defense army, the nation's army? What is the situation where you are now?
No, actually, from the people who got evacuated, I have not seen anybody do that. What I have seen are really brave men, some entrepreneurs, businessmen, actually the mayor of Irpin, who stayed there, who are currently in the town, and who are defending the town against the aggression of Russian troops. So basically, people who made a choice to stay there, they've been staying there till this moment. But most of the people flee, because they understand that if they don't help themselves, if they don't save themselves, it might be too late, for them to be able to help the country. So basically, people who wanted to stay, they're staying there.
We have very worrying messages from occupied cities of Russians starting to terrorize the people who are staying behind, and they looting shops, they raping women, they beating people up, they shooting civilians, they cutting off access to hospitals, to safety, to everything. Do you have those messages from Irpin as well?
Well, I have not received such messages personally. However, I have read posts of people who have. For example, I subscribe to the Facebook page of the mayor of Irpin, Mr. Markushin. And recently, just yesterday, Markushin shared a post. It was a screenshot where he shared a message he received from a Russian phone number, which basically said, leave Irpin, get out of here, otherwise we will kill you. So he started receiving threats, and people who are defending Irpin, protecting our town, are receiving those threats from Russian troops.
It is very interesting because this is a typical FSB strategy to occupy city, and then they unfold the next level, which is how to put people under their thumb, how to put people under their control. Do you think there are many people inside Ukraine who are helping them to get the information, to find out who the government officials are? Do you have groups of people around Ukraine who are helping the occupiers?
I don't think so. At least in my personal experience, I have not seen any. What I felt from the very first day of war is that Ukrainians seem to get even more united by this war. So there's a sense of community. There's a sense of communication. Shall we put it this way? So not really. There was a lot of effort made to defend Ukraine, to actually do something against this oppression, against this aggression. But what I see, you're absolutely right, Vera, that these threats are coming, and these are the strategies that Russian troops are using to terrify, yes, let's say, to scare citizens and to scare military people.
Oh my God, it's really terrible, and not only people inside Ukraine are united by this horror. We all united now. People around the world are united, and we do feel deeply for the sufferings of all those people, all people who are trying to escape, who have been shot or went under the attack while escaping. And I just want to say that soon we will have a footage from New York National Opera, who are now starting every show and every performance with Ukraine national anthem. Well, I've never really thought about the words of the national anthem of Ukraine, but now they are coming in such a forceful way. You do understand every word, what it means. And the National Opera in New York, they put on every program, they put on the words of the Ukrainian anthem so people can sing it with them, which I think was a fantastic way of showing their solidarity with Ukrainian nation. Ivan, I understand it is a difficult time for everybody right now. However, how do people survive economically? How do you survive? How do you get money from? How do you make money to survive? This is a very, very difficult situation in terms of business.
Vera, absolutely. This is a super complicated question to answer. What I can say from my perspective that on February 24, my business freezed because I couldn't work. I couldn't continue, my lessons or work with my students. I couldn't promise anything to my clients, who already paid, who already made prepayments. So this is still a question to be answered. I would say, so what I see, people are using the money they had accumulated before the war. They're using their savings, or maybe they're using the cash they currently have. If they don't, people often borrow from their friends or from their relatives. So we're just finding a way to get by. We're not talking about any business projects at this point or any new financial instruments that would help people survive, but we are talking about getting by, about survival. What I'm going to say, for example, I do have clients, I do have Ukrainians who live abroad and who say, Ivan, we want to continue learning English. Let's do it. As soon as you're ready, we're ready. So I just started messaging my clients saying, okay, I'm ready to continue our courses, our individual tutoring. So that's what I'm hoping to, kind of get back on track very soon. But mostly there's still lots of questions. My clients are mostly entrepreneurs. So for people owning businesses, it's still an important question as well, because if it's an offline business, especially in a location that's been bombed, that's been attacked, it's hard to do anything, so you're basically all their business has been broken. So what I see is that there will be a big demand for financial coaches, maybe business coaches, people helping entrepreneurs and basically everybody who's self-employed to create new ways of making money, new ways of surviving. So that's the thing that's going to be important in the weeks to come.
Well, this is really something we never expected. And I know many people were talking about possibilities of the invasion, and many analysts were talking about it in some sort of future, and maybe not the distant future, but nobody kind of realized that could happen tomorrow, or and now everybody's saying, well, we were talking about it, but it still came very, very unexpected. I understand that many people now have to leave all the material possessions they had, their houses, their cars, their tables, plates, pictures, everything is left behind. How do you feel about that? Do you feel sorry for that, or you are happy to get out alive?
Well, both. I'm going to say both, because when you're trying to save your life, when you're running for your life, you're starting to care less about possessions, about your belongings. What I'm going to say is that I escaped European with 4 bags, so I had to pick up everything, all the essentials, the things that you cannot easily buy in a new place, into 4 bags. Yes, I am starting to feel sorry about the things I lost because of war. But I'm starting to get those feelings only now, because before that, as I was on the road, as I was fleeing, I couldn't even think about anything but just finding safety, finding a place to stay. So, of course, people regret that. I personally regret that. Many people already have hope that they will, make it all back. They will compensate for that. They'll be able to, let's say, set up their life, set up even a better life in the future. But those feelings of regret are still there. a lot of my neighbors, for example, are not sure about what has happened to their apartments. For example, I know that my apartment has been on fire, and that windows are broken in my apartment, but I have no idea what's inside. So will my apartment building be there? Will it not? It's still not clear. So same goes for lots of residents of Irpin, because we understand that there have been a lot of bombing and airstrikes as well, which basically followed, which happened on the following day after I left. So it's still hard to accept that so many people have lost everything they've ever had. And right now we are facing the future that is blank, that is unpredictable, that is not planned or scheduled in any way. And we have to find a way to keep on living. I think that's the biggest request that I hear from my friends and from my clients personally.
Yeah, just to find the strength, to go on and continue. I understand that from the examples of Aleppo, of what the Russian forces did in Syria, what they did in Grozny, and everywhere there, wherever they are appearing, they seem to use the same technology or technique. They start bombing the city till it's flat. They don't worry about anything. They just reduce it to ground zero. Maybe that's why that's letter Z is for, because they want to reduce everything to zero.
My goodness, yes, and
Yeah.
I think it makes sense, because just a few days ago, as I was reading my European chats, with people living in European, people were saying that this is what they're going to do. They're going to reduce our residential complex, basically our apartment buildings, to ground zero. So it's quite possible.
However, well, I only hoping that the bravery of Ukrainian soldiers and also Ukrainian air defense and Ukrainian army will stop them at some point, because I don't think who can stop them if not Ukraine, because Ukraine is now on the front, on the first front of the attackers, and they're going to beat them up with as much force as they have. But what is the general notion in the society? Do you believe in Ukrainian army, that they can stand strong and really resist that pressure?
Well, I'm going to say I do. Vera, just before our live, I read some statistics. It basically said that 76% of Ukrainians believe that Ukrainian army will win and it will dominate. I understand that our forces are not even, because Russia obviously must have more potential, must have more, soldiers or more possibilities for war. And they certainly seem to be more prepared, because they are the attackers. Yes, they are the invaders. What I do believe in is that Ukraine, being a democratic state, has lots of partnerships with European countries, with Western countries as well, who are able to provide support, and who are able to provide also military support to fight back. So I believe we can make it. I believe we have everything we need. We're strong psychologically. We're a strong nation, and it's just a matter of time as to when the war will be over.
Thank you. Well, in 1941, nobody knew that war will be over. People were preparing that for all eventualities. However, war eventually was over, and I'm hoping that we will see Nuremberg process 2 now for Russians, for their war crimes, and this process is started already, and it does give us hope that everything will be coming back to normal, and that Russian authorities will be punished, will be put on trial, and we will never repeat anything like that again. So that's my hope. And I would like to finish our meeting, and thank you very much, Ivan. And I would like to finish our meeting with the beautiful composition that was prepared by pupils from the King's College in Worcester. And they recorded this video of themselves singing a Ukrainian folk song and shared it with school in Ukraine. And one school in Kyiv replied, "This means a lot to us." So thank you very much for you, Ivan, for your strength. And thank you very much for everybody who are supporting Ukraine, supporting Ukrainian fighting effort, and help Ukraine economically, and help with your donations. And thank you very much. And thank you for everybody who are supporting Ukraine with cultural efforts and sending them their love, their songs, and their goodwill. Thank you very
It's
much.
been my pleasure. Thank you very much, Vera.
Thank you. Good evening.